Welcome back into the studios. It's still Election Watch on Galaxy Television, where we continue our coverage of the presidential and National Assembly elections. I still have with me in the studio Barrister Wale Ogunade, constitutional lawyer, human rights activist. Welcome back.
Thank you.
I also have Dr. Shete Olu, political scientist and public affairs analyst. I beg your pardon.
Good morning, Nigerians, once again.
And also joining us virtually from Abuja, we have Mr. Felix Okoro, Editor-in-Chief, Nigeria Yellow Pages. Good morning, Mr. Okoro. Can you hear me, Mr. Okoro? Good morning. Okay, we'll come back to him once we have the signal. Vice Ogunade, let me come to you. You have more updates probably than we do in terms of a first-hand experience of what's going on out there.
Yes.
What's your experience like in the last 30 minutes or so that you've been on?
Well, the election has not yet kicked off in the Ikeja area. And not only Ikeja area, I've been getting updates from my members all over the country. It's the same thing. I don't know what's happening. Really, I got an information, but I don't want to believe it so. And I guess we have passed that stage. And one of the things, the main information and gist is that the INEC officers have refused to move because their allowances have not been paid. This has become a recurring decimal, and we think that by now we should have passed that stage of INEC officers not being taken care of. Because that's the foundation of any service delivery project, their welfare. And it's surprising because the whole work that INEC has put in place in the last 3 years, because I've been involved with them, will just go to waste if this little thing indeed is not taken care of. So I guess as we are talking now, from the top, they'll begin to ask questions and call those who are responsible for the various states, particularly in the southwest.
Right.
My people in the southeast have not sent their reports to me, and my people in the north equally have not sent their reports to me. But in the southwest, Lagos, Ogun, Oyo, and Ondo, they are yet to commence, even at 9 o'clock and 9:08 now. It's not something good. But anyway, the second leg of it is that the time begins to count when the poll opens. So if they start 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, they have to extend by the number of hours delayed. So our people should not have experienced or put any fear on themselves. The poll will not close 3 o'clock today because they have started late. It's a simple thing.
Dr. Shete, are you surprised by this report he's given? Because this appears to be a recurring decimal in our politics.
I'm not surprised. The management of logistics and electoral management, in terms of distribution of materials and allocation of ad hoc and permanent staff, pre-election trainings and so on and so forth, have always posed problems, to electoral umpires in Africa. It's not peculiar to Nigeria. It's embarrassing, though, that we'll get feedback that the non-payment of allowances, would delay elections, on such a day as the presidential elections. Well, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised, and I would urge the principal officers to intervene as quickly as possible to nip this ugly trend in the bud. I suppose the earlier election commences, the better. My fear is the more it is delayed, the less likely Nigerians, will be interested in going to the polling stations. No, it's unfortunate, it's rather unfortunate, but we can still deal with it, I suppose.
Right. Okay, we'll take a short break here, and when we come back, very soon also we'll bring you a report from our correspondent here in Lagos, who will be giving us an update from his current location. Barrister Ogunade, let me ask you, just before the break, during our first segment, I was asking you about, you talked about litigation. and a school of thought believes that our courts should not be a place where political questions are answered. I want your thoughts on that.
Obviously, it shouldn't be the court that will decide who to occupy a political office. It is the people, through the instrumentality of the vote, that should do that. And that's why we want a strong, and we've been advocating for a strong intra-party democracy. When the party themselves do a house cleaning, presenting a very good candidate, obviously it will be a hard sell to the electorate that they will now want to manipulate the vote to ensuring that that candidate wins. And if they don't have to manipulate the vote, then of course it will be, as we've been saying, the theme song, free and fair election. And if we have a free and fair election, there will not be need for people to go to the election tribunal and eventually ending up in the Supreme Court. So the issue of litigation is an aberration, is an anathema. It's something that is not within the contemplation of a political process. So its involvement in Nigeria is used to corrupt the system and to ensuring that somebody who did not contest an election generally comes in through the back door, through one crook or hook, to get in and assuming political office. And we have an avalanche of them, starting from Chimok. In fact, the most interesting thing is Amechi, who did not contest and became the governor. Right. We even hear about that of the Imo governor, what's his name now? His name just ran off me, the governor of Imo State, the present governor of Imo State. He too came third, but of course the electoral the justice system threw him up to occupy the office. I hope Uzodimma threw him up, and who again? There are many of them like that the electoral process threw on the people, and of course the people will keep quiet.
Right.
And of course it's not good enough.
Right. Let's go straight to Felix Okoro in Abuja. Good morning, Mr. Okoro. Good morning, Mr. Okoro. Can you hear me? Okay, he seems to be trying to set up that. Sorry, Bryce Ogbandi, for interrupting.
No problem.
I can hear you.
Yes. So the issue of litigation, I hope our politicians and government officers and the electoral umpire will do all they can to ensure that the procedure goes on very well. If the procedure goes on very well, there won't be any need for litigation, because generally people will be aggrieved, and you cannot stop anybody from ventilating his grievance. And in ventilating his grievance, you get a strong lawyer, one brilliant lawyer, you just pick one little thing and off it goes. It can disturb the apple cart. So we want a situation where litigation is removed totally from the electoral process.
Right. Okay. Let's go to Abuja, where Felix Okoro is standing by. Good morning, Mr. Okoro. Can you hear me now? Hello.
I can hear you.
Okay, he seems to be having a problem with his connection there.
Hello?
Dr. Shetolu,
Yes.
is it possible
I can hear you
for us
loud and clear.
to do without the courts in our politics?
Well, my response would rather be it is probable to reduce the intervention of the court in political outcomes. In the first instance, I'll appreciate that the court is overburdened with politically related cases, and with politically related cases, which is not the best, you know. Secondly, the somewhat oversaturation of the court system with politically related cases is dragging the courts, the court, particularly the judges, into the terrain of politics. And the consequence, in my view, will be that court verdicts and decisions, you know, are doubted and derided by different interests. The challenge is to depoliticize the court process and reprofessionalize the courts. You know, we need to reduce instances of litigations on politically related cases. You know, legitimacy derives from the populace, certainly not the court, and experts have argued this much. You know, the electoral process, the political process, you know, should be reworked such that the booby traps, the shortcomings are addressed in a manner that political outcomes, you know, are largely acceptable without resort to court.
The argument also, Barrister Ogunade, is that even the politicians should not be allowed to enjoy the office they aspire for. That this issue should be resolved even before they assume office. But what we see is that they assume office and then the courts remove them.
Yes, there are two angles to it. We have the pre and the post-election litigations. The pre is before the election, when party candidates and their political parties and their members have issues, and the post is when it is discovered that one way or the other somebody got into office untoward. And because of that, in order to avoid the Ngige scenario, if you remember, Ngige got into office through the one way or the other, and of course it took in fact with Aregbesola and Oye, what's this man name now, the former governor of Osun State, no, not Oyetola, the military man Olaguse Oyinlola. You know that they too dragged for almost 3 years, and the man, of course, it took a long time. So where am I going is that because of those two examples, Ngige and Oyinlola, now of course the Electoral Act was amended to give it a period of 90 days within which all election matters must be concluded for somebody who occupies office.
Let's try and link up with Felix Okoro virtually in Abuja. Good morning, Mr. Okoro.
Hello.
Right. Can you give us a feel of what's happening in Abuja, at your end in Abuja?
Well, I'm at home. I'm not in the field, and reports so far indicates that the process did not start quite early as expected. There are still logistic challenges here and there, and it's normal and usual with this kind of election. You know, it's a big one, and it requires a lot of hands and the coordinated approach. I don't know how far INEC will be able to handle this huge responsibility, just because the sheer number of people here in Nigeria. Elections here don't come easy, they don't come cheap. Coupled with the situation we have in our hand in Nigeria, capacity of almost everything. So right here in Abuja, reports so far indicate that some polls have opened, some yet to open, just like that.
Appears to be the same thing we go through every 4 years in terms of deployment of sensitive materials, logistics and all that. How can we begin to address some of these issues? It's becoming a recurring decimal.
Okay. I think it has to do with INEC. They have to look at their processes once again, either by way of amending the Electoral Act and also reducing the number of political parties. And INEC has a lot to do. And the security agencies also, who are working to provide the necessary security during elections. Again, logistics. INEC doesn't own vehicles. They don't own drivers. INEC depend on vendors, third party, to be able to help them in these logistic challenges, how trustworthy are they? Are they compromised? Are they up to scratch? What are their own thinking about the election? Are they as committed? Are they nationalistic? Are they seeing it as something that they all have to work to succeed? It depends on how these other stakeholders, along with INEC, will do this. Because every 4 years, we come to this road. Nothing seems to have improved. And we can say we've made some progress, but as we are making progress, our population is ballooning. You see the number of electorate we are dealing with this time around compared to 2019. Our population keeps increasing, but our capacity to deliver, I don't know whether it's increasing at the same rate. So it's still a long journey. It's a learning curve. With time, I think INEC will have a handle to all these things. But as I speak to you, as evident in this election, I don't think that INEC has everything under its wraps.
Is hinged on how far voters can vote free. How assured are you, or how confident are you that INEC will deliver on its promises, especially with all these challenges we're seeing early in the day?
INEC, with all sincerity of purpose, meant well and still mean well for the election. It is to their credit to deliver free, fair, and credible elections. Regardless of all these challenges, the most important thing is the intention of INEC. They want to deliver a credible election. And like a typical Nigerian scenario, people will find a way out to surmount the challenges. I think one of the things they really have to do, this timing of a thing, one of the panelists there said that elections didn't start early. So where elections didn't start early, if it is late by an hour or two, they had to now add an hour or two to the closing of the polls. So that is the way they are going to do it. And in the future election, I wouldn't recommend that INEC should go and buy its own vehicles. Where are they going to get the money? Even if they have the money, maybe donor agencies will assist them with vehicles. Where are they going to get the drivers? And when they get the drivers to drive the vehicles, the money to pay them will be another thing. So it's part of our developmental challenges. We are looking forward to a time where, when we don't need to deal with these humongous logistic challenges, where at the comfort of one's home office, we can vote. But much as we have to go this route of ballot papers, going to polling units, doing all manner of things, we are bound to have all these challenges. We don't have the best of infrastructure. We don't have the best of everything you can think of. So it's part of the growth that is envisaged. Maybe with time, I can tell you that the election today is better than what we used to have in the past. There has been this incremental progress. The most important thing is sustaining the progress, one election being better than the other. That is the way to go.
The idea is that as we progress, we get better. At what point are we going to see, things working seamlessly in terms of delivery of seamless operations, the delivery of seamless elections for Nigeria?
Yeah, you don't take it in isolation. As the society evolves, the individual in the society, they evolve, they advance. Everything will be growing simultaneously. If you have a largely illiterate society, you don't expect a miracle to happen in a process like this. But if you have a largely educated citizen and you have the the deployment of technology to election processes is going to be seamless at that time. There is nowhere in the world you don't have one challenge or the other with regards to election. Even in the US, we always cite examples. They have one or two challenges. But the most important thing with the kind of challenges they have is that they have strong institutions that are able to deal with whatever challenges that arise. So that is the difference. So we are not going to hope for a seamless process by just optimizing INEC processes. The citizens also have to advance in their technology use, in their education. Our institutions have to be optimized. Our logistics have to be improved upon so that together we work towards delivering a seamless election. And the only way out is technology. And for people to be able to have access or use that technology, education is key. So we need to really have our citizens well educated, at least to the extent that they can use all these technological devices for election and the rest of them. So that is the only way out.
I'd like to take you up on that. The new way is the use of BVAS and IREF in terms of uploading the results electronically, which INEC has used in off-season elections. In Ekiti, we've seen it in Ekiti, we've seen it in Osun State. Now this is a general election where elections are taking place in states across the country. How confident are we that this will impact positively on this election?
Well, I don't think there will be cases of ballot box snatching, because if you snatch a ballot box, it's going to make no sense or meaning to you. There will be no whole idea of writing a result, because if you write a result that is contrary to what we have in the BVAS, it's useless. Collation centers are just like a normal way you meet and collect result. But before the result gets to the collation centers, the result is already with INEC, with the IREF. So it's an improvement. And that's the kind of thing I was talking about, where we have to improve all these processes. Because if you don't do that, remember what used to happen in Nigeria? I recall they say in the 60s, there was what they call ballot box stuffing or whatever. They would be stuffing the ballot boxes. And there was a time in this country we were told each political party has its own ballot box. So when you want to vote for party A or candidate A, you locate his or her own box. So when they noticed that some people will go and pour acid under the pretext of voting in their opponent's system, they now found out that the only way to overcome that is to have all the ballots in one box. So that was the way they cured the idea of burning ballot boxes with acid or ballot papers with acid. Okay, so with the collation of results at the collation centers, I found out that people will snatch ballot boxes. So when they snatch ballot boxes, they will go and empty it and fill it with new and totally different ballot papers. So in order to cure that, we have BVAS. Now, BVAS, what they call it bimodal voters accreditation system, it authenticates the voter either through your fingerprints or your facial photograph. If the fingers fail to authenticate you, at least your face will be authenticated. And if anybody fails these two, definitely that person is not the owner of the voter's card he or she is carrying. So with the BVAS now, you don't have people who are not accredited voting in an election, okay? And with the IREF, the result viewing portal of INEC, so anybody going to tear result pasted on the wall after the poll result has been announced, that doesn't make sense again, because the result is already with INEC. So these are innovations which INEC has been doing in order to improve their processes. Election is about outcome, it's about processes. You might have a peaceful election, but if the processes are not clear, people will still agitate. People might not fight, but yet they are disgruntled that the processes are not clear. At least with the off-cycle elections we had in Anambra, in I think Ekiti and Osun last, at least people have confidence in the beavers to the extent that it's no longer about the number of registered voters for a determination to be made as per who won an election. It is the number of accredited voters. For instance, if 500 people are registered in a polling unit, and on election day like today, 300 people shows up. So at the end of the day, a declaration will be made if the total number of votes is no more than 300. And nobody will be saying, oh, 200 people didn't vote, because they didn't show up. In the past, they will say, look, we will not make a determination because the number of people who didn't vote are almost equal to those who voted. So the introduction of beavers has made that very, very seamless, that it is the number of accredited voters that matter, no longer the number of registered voters in any polling unit. So it is a plus for INEC, and that is the kind of thing that gives confidence. So people will no longer agitate more because the processes are clear and everybody seems to understand it. So that's how it is.
Let me come to you. We'll take a break, Mr. Okoro, and we'll come back to you. Barrister Ogunade, you are involved in a lot of voter awareness initiatives. Do you think that all the parties involved, government, civil societies, have done enough in terms of creating enlightenment for the Nigerian voter?
We've done enough, or we've done our best. If our best is not enough, it's still a work in progress, and we'll continue. We will not rest on our horse. We didn't get here yesterday. I mean, like you said the other time, when we started, it was just an ordinary piece of paper like this. Right. That was the voting paper. And it encouraged ballot stuffing, ballot rigging, snatching of ballot boxes, and so on. From 1999 to this time, it has been a gradual process, progressive. And to us, it's okay, at least. It's not as if we are moving backward. We are moving forward. And while Mr. Okoro was talking, I was looking at my system, and reports from my people all over the country is that yes, polling has started in all over, almost everywhere now, in Ikorodu, in Ekpe, in Ilorin, in Kaduna, in Enugu, Abule Odo, even in Ikeja here, where again, really Agege, Ifakojaye. Polling have started now, so I guess it's a little bit hiccup, right. And I know because a whole lot of training took place for this program, for this election, and I know that all this training will come on board. Well, you know, any good thing sometimes we just have a little bit of a disappointing takeoff, and to me, it's okay. At least I guess maybe somebody had and said no, that can be, and of course they've called themselves to order and they have started rolling out the drums. So to me, is work in progress. The only thing that we are going to promote, and I want every right-thinking Nigerian to be involved in it, is the use of technology. If we have technology, we will have a whole lot of we'll have less stress in terms of voting. You don't even need to all this movement, all this going, all this shut down, all the challenges that we are going through now. All you need to do is that you call, the government will call the service provider. I don't see any big deal in that. Call the service providers, improve the service thing, and of course on election day, anybody at the touch of the button, people are voting. Even the argument by some people that some old women cannot vote, cannot do. most of the old men have children who are computer savvy. You two know what I'm talking about. Right. These children they are wizards when it comes to this thing. They know it, they will manipulate it. You say, who taught you? So all they need to do is that they give it, they send it. Meanwhile, I know that there are some of these politicians who give this Android phone as gift to some of their supporters. So they can as well just tell the manufacturers to do something that can just help in voting for voting, so that if you look at the cost of manufacturing and producing this thing, it will be far, far cheaper than all the cost of the logistics that we go through in this election, the failure that will attain it. And of course, I've monitored elections in, we call it the Okeogun area of Oyo State. Very far long area. Very far long. I've equally monitored an election in Adamawa State. Sometimes it will take 3 hours traveling before you get to a town. And the issue of technology will just solve that at the touch of the button.
Dr. Shetolu, do you share this school of thought in terms of deploying, you know, the argument, again, like Barrister Ogunade and also Mr. Okoro have profiled, is that are we growing, is our capacity growing as our population is growing? It looks like it's not going at the same proportion, and therefore it affects, you know, events like this.
Yes, so Mr. Okoro, I suppose,
right,
yes, made some interesting points. Our population is expanding, but the capacity of the electoral management team is not growing correspondingly. I'm afraid, you know, I made the point earlier, and I'll repeat it, that the management of elections, particularly the management of logistics, has constituted a major problem to election and electoral outcomes in Africa. It's not peculiar to Nigeria. And the question we should be asking is, why is this problem persistent, and why is it pervasive? It's persistent and pervasive to the extent that he made the point, Mr. Okoro made the point, when he referred to developmental challenges. I mean, Nigeria, it's a developing economy. I'd rather not call it underdeveloped. You know, developing economy with poor infrastructure, technology infrastructure, with poor literacy level, with poor social infrastructure, you know, and so on and so forth. The question is, do we have the economic and social base to introduce technology on a large scale in a largely economically backward and technologically underdeveloped economy? I'm afraid we're not there yet. I do not envisage that will happen too soon. I mean, I do not envisage it. You know, Nigeria is diverse, you know, and you know, the picture of what Lagos, urban Lagos, and an urban Southwest and semi-urban Southwest like, may not paint the picture of the rural Yobe, you know, rural Yobe, or the rural Adamawa, you know, or the rural Damaturu, you know. I'm afraid the rural sector of the economy, you know, is still far larger than the urban sector, which is technology based, which is modern economy based,
and it's not growing
etc. Yes, you know, the large component of the Nigerian economy is still pre-industrial and pre-technology. I'm afraid we do not have the capacities at the level of state officials, at the level of state capability, at the level of development, you know, to pursue those options. You know, what I would rather prefer we should work on is to identify the problems with logistics, you know, transport, recruitment of, you know, logistical officers, deployment of staff, deployment of election materials, you know, and so on and so forth. Well, we should consider this. Nigeria is unarguably the most populated country in Africa and the most populous black nation, you know, and it's a vast territory. And some of the territories, my colleague referred to it earlier, you know, might not be accessed in 4 or 5 hours within Nigeria. You know, there are distances within Cross River that takes 5 or 6 hours within a state. And you recall by here, 5 hours would take a traveler from Lagos to Addis Ababa. You know, we should appreciate this constraint, these challenges. I suppose we should address those challenges at the moment. Mr. Okoro made the point that struck me. He has a rather rhetorical question, you know, that the electoral umpire is relying on vendors, you know, vendors to convey materials, to distribute, etc., etc., you know, road transports, etc., 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 and he's probably attributing some of the delays to the poor capacity level of the vendors. And he asks as a point if the electoral umpire should consider, you know, handling those logistics directly. But I suppose he equally responded. He equally noted the point that Nigeria is huge, and for general elections or for any elections.
How can we address this? Where you are not dependent on these vendors, because they will disappoint.
Well, if you ask me, if you ask me, we may still need to rely on the vendors in a while, because the alternatives, the credible and reliable alternatives, you know, that I envisage might not be achievable too soon. Right. These are my worries.
Okay, we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll take you to Ibadan, where Kunle Ojo is standing by. Stay with us on the election. Okay, welcome back. We'll take you straight to Oyo State, where Kunle Ojo is standing by with a live update. Good morning, Kunle. Yes, what's the situation in Ibadan?
Like I reported the last time when I was at the RAC centers at Ibadan North, that most of the adult staff of the INEC, they are supposed to have the destination for their various destinations, are yet to depart the area. The impact of that was that most of the polling units in Ibadan North are yet to get materials for the election. Take for instance at Iwo Road, most of the voters are on ground, ready to perform their civic duties, but INEC officials with the materials arrived late, and the report from other parts, Agodi, Eleyele, Bodija, the situation is the same, due to the fact that the materials left the RAC center late than expected. Oh no, my assessment of the situation that was that I saw voters on queue, but they are waiting for the INEC staff to arrive. Just about 5 minutes ago, reports started filtering that the INEC now the election was to start at 8 o'clock, failed to commence as scheduled. And on the part of the security, they are up to the task at every junction in Ibadan, Eleyele, Ologweru, and other parts. We have security checkpoints on ground where those that are on essential duty are being thoroughly checked and are being thoroughly checked by this official. So the situation now is that the voting is yet to commence in some part of Ibadan.
Materials. What really is the problem? Are the vendors at fault, or who is at fault?
My assessment of the situation is more of the logistics than at RAC centers. We have the manpower on ground. There are but limited vehicles who are on ground to move these materials to the various polling units which we have across Ibadan and the other adjunct polling units. But the situation now is getting improved as more like that. I'm at the INEC office. I'm speaking with you. The INEC official disclosed that more materials, more vehicles have been moved to all these RAC centers, and that materials are now getting to the polling center. But at the time while I was at those polling units, I only saw voters on ground waiting for INEC officials to get to the polling units.
Soon for more updates. Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Still the issue of logistics that we've talked about. It's worrisome.
It is.
We get to talk about this here every 4 years.
Yes.
You know.
And I hope that we are not going to talk about it in the next 4 years. Why? Because we are going to push for a technology, full-fledged technology-driven election. We do it in the NBA. I know 1 or 2 other associations do it. And I'm involved in, of course, I handle election for some small groups. No doubt here, small groups, but we start from somewhere. And I was expecting that God has given us the opportunity anyway of an off-season election. That's this, the governorship election in between. I will expect that INEC should take a dive at that, take a bite at that, to ensuring that they test their application and they test themselves, ensuring that indeed it can work out. Yeah. Because to me, it's no big deal if there's nobody in Nigeria now who does not work with the alert system. Everyone calls an alert. Even these are old mummies that you talk about in the market, in the rural areas. They too have their various bank accounts and they get their alerts through their bank. So if they can operate that, the voting thing is even easy, very easy. All you need to do is you design an application that will pop out once you have registered, and it will just pop out on your phone. And all you need, it is your phone, it is attached to your number. All you need to just print on the system and submit. Shikenan, it goes. You are counted. There is no stress, and of course, look at the enormity, look at the financial loss. The whole country is shut down. You can imagine the financial loss that goes on with this. To me, it is not a wise thing.
But the concern also is that in terms of manipulation, hackers at work, and you know, people who are able to manipulate the system. How can this be against?
The Yoruba will say somebody who asks for the road will not miss the road. There are other climes, there are other countries who are involved in this. I don't want I don't want to vernacularize or localize this program.
It's okay.
Right. So the other countries, they do this thing. Even African countries now, they started. Ireland, Ghana have started doing an electronic voting. So let Nigeria go to all these countries that they do it and learn. And what does it cost? What is it that happens? What do they do? It's a simple thing. At least they alert the universal, the technology, the electronic banking system does not originate from Nigeria. They got it from somewhere. So let the system too, let the government too encourage the use of technology. Let them go to other clients that they do it without any stress, and let's have it here in this country so that we have this peace of mind. All I need to do is that on election day, in fact, we can even vote out season. You just put a timeline that, okay, there is a time within which you can vote, a 30-day window. You vote, you register, and of course the thing will be accumulating. Then when the thing is closed, then they now count it. The whole thing will be like this Beavers thing, or the petrol station. When you go to a petrol station, there is no cheating. It is what you buy that you pay for, except maybe if the petrol attendant now quickly did some manipulation, which sometimes they do, but again, generally it is deemed that you'll be very, very sensitive when you are buying your fuel. In fact, I like the old system. That one, it's counting. You see, the thing will be counting. Do you remember the petrol, the manual thing? It will be coming one by one, unlike this electronic thing. Before you know it, your thing is here. You now start arguing, how now? And you say, well, that's it now.
That's what you bought.
That's what you bought. So yes, but again, we can do a whole lot of improvement on technology.
Right. Okay. Let's look at political parties. The role of political parties in all of this, without mentioning, parties. There's a school of thought that says that political parties have turned to vehicles to struggle for power, without enduring ideals, philosophies, and values. Again, how can we bring some level of development in this area? That it will be about the people and not about power, the struggle for power.
Well, you asked a very interesting question, and it borders on the evolution of politics and political development in Nigeria. I'll make this point. and the literature supports it. We had political parties that were development oriented. We had political parties that were ideology based. We had political parties that were rooted in the people. We have political parties that had structures at the very rural level to provincial, to regional and national level. We had political parties that were democratic, and we have political parties that were based on the policies of inclusion and democratization. And what phase of Nigeria's political issues do you have in mind? Particularly the First Republic. The political parties in the First Republic evolved over time. The parties evolved their philosophies, evolved their ideologies, evolved their developmental blueprints, evolved their structures and their variants of democratic practices. I recall that I read in some of the literature, as espoused by Kalu Ezera, Humphrey Nwosu, and others on Nigerian government and politics in Nigeria, that Nigeria's First Republic, some of the major political parties actually presented issues, foreign policy issues and major economic issues for debates at provincial levels in the Western region and some other regions. You recall the Nigeria Defense Pact that became controversial. Some of these issues were discussed at the grassroots in those political parties. So the parties were inclusive. The parties fostered participation and fostered democracy. I recall, let me share this. The first political meeting I attended was in 1980 or 81. I went with my father, who is a politician. I wasn't a member though, but I was curious, and I accompanied him to the meeting of a major political party in the Second Republic, which was dominant in the West. When we got to the meeting, it was a ward meeting. It wasn't zonal, it was a ward meeting. The first document or paper he presented to the ward chair was his financial payment paper. He submitted it and he paid, his monthly dues. He paid his monthly due.
Meaning that he has a stake in the party.
Yeah, which was confirmed. So he was a financial paying member. So which meant commitment to the party. But we had a perversion somewhere along the line between 81 and 83, when money bags, and politically corrupt politicians. You saw some of these parties and hijacked the party structures, and the parties were no longer democratic, and the members were no longer equal joiners, and so on and so forth. The other point I need to raise is about why is the Nigerian state through the Electoral Act insisting on national parties? Why must a party be national? We had the United Middle Belt Congress that cared about the Middle Belt people, that was interested in the Middle Belt question within the context of the national question. If a party chooses to address regional question, if a party chooses to address green question, agrarian question, climate question, why not? If a party chooses to restrict itself to a region in Nigeria, why not? I am not comfortable with the idea of insisting that every party should be national, because in the long run these parties lack substance. I rather prefer parties that evolve, and parties that are issue based, and parties that may not necessarily be national.
Let me ask you to hold your thoughts a bit. We'll take a short break, and we'll bring Gabriel Odia online. He has a report from Benue State. Stay with us. We'll go straight to Benue State, where Gabriel Odia is standing by with an update. Good morning, Gabriel.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, what's the update from your current location in Benue State?
Earlier on, it was topsy-turvy because the voting didn't start on time because there was a minor delay. It was a slow start, and because the materials didn't get their various polling units as it should be, because they had some issues with mobilization. And so some of the adult staff said they wouldn't move until they are mobilized before they leave. And shortly after they were mobilized, started living in triples, and as they left, we also went round to the various polling units, and we met them doing what they should be doing. And so far so good. It's been a good one, and people are already voting as I speak with you at the moment. But one of the challenges they earlier had was that the ad hoc staff who were handling the beavers initially had issues with capturing information about the voter, apparently because some didn't know the actual functions of the beaver. So as soon as they got it right, it became so smooth, and under 3 minutes we would have done the accreditation and voting. That is just the process for now.
Benue is the issue of security. Can you give us an update on that? What is presently going on in and around Benue State in terms of ensuring that voters come out in their large numbers to vote today?
Okay, the Commissioner of Police yesterday spoke about the operation on ground and how officers and men have been mobilized in the various watch points, various areas, waterways, just to ensure that there's adequate protection of citizens and property. And so, as I speak with you right now, all other security agencies, in collaboration with the police, the lead agency, of the task with what's on ground. Yesterday, the CP also spoke that there's a quick response team that have been positioned at various strategic areas to also ensure that when there's an upsurge of any issues, they will rise to the occasion. But from the look of things so far, there appears to be a level of security around. There's a high level of security built up in most places that we have been to. And if you go around the city metropolis, you will see that there are soldiers, there are policemen, there are civil defense, they're all combined, manning at various points just to ensure that there's this easy flow of movement. At the same time, also stop people moving unnecessarily with their vehicles, except those on essential duties. What I can tell you, apart from the fact that maybe you want to talk about areas like the rural areas for now, I can't, I've not been there, but from the CP's information given to us when we met him yesterday, he said that everything is actually prepared for, including any emergency.
On the part of the voters, what are you seeing? Are they anxious to cast their vote, or is there any apprehension whatsoever on their part?
No, there's this high level of enthusiasm on the part of the voters, because one, at the initial stage, like I said before, there was this fear because they didn't start on time, and when they started, so that the first operation. So if not that they did that, start inside moving also, there was not able to come so far, and everything is moving smooth.
Right. Thank you very much, Gabriel, for that update. We'll get to speak to you much later today. And all the best. Okay, that was our correspondent, Gabriel Odia, giving us that update from Benue State. Bryce Algondi, let me come back to you. I'd like you to take it off from where Dr. Sheteolu stopped just before we took that report. In terms of the political parties, like I said, we're not mentioning names, being turned to vehicles to struggle for power without enduring ideals, philosophies, and values. How do we begin to change that story?
We were getting it right during the First Republic. But the Second Republic, the military came with their ideology, tainted it. Babangida was trying to do something, created a government-owned political party, and of course people now fell into the left and the right. We didn't go far because one thing was missing: honesty and the love of the people. What Babangida was busy doing was his own personal interest. And that personal interest now boomeranged. And of course, I'm sure he is not enjoying it. So because of lack of personal interest, politics as I know and political parties as I know, is that it is a vehicle through which people seek power, particularly in climes where independent candidacy are not recognized.
Right.
In Nigeria, independent candidacy is not recognized, and thus for you to seek political power, it must be through a political party. And in seeking political power through a political party, what happens is that you must join a political party that share the same ideology with you. And of course, the principle here is that birds of the same feather flocking together.
But is that the same in Nigeria?
That's where I'm going. It's not. In fact, in Nigeria, what we have is political harlotry, or some people will call it jumpology. You see someone in a political party
where your political needs can be met.
Yes. In the morning, he's in political party B. In the afternoon, the same day, he's in political party B. In the evening, he goes to bed with political party D. Definitely, that's not straightforward, and that is not in the interest of the people. He's just going there, just as you said now, for what he will get. And if it's about what he will get, then definitely the people are not factored in. And we see it happen now in reality. People get into political office and they use it for personal aggrandizement, because the system throws up a zero-sum game situation. Zero-sum game is a winner-takes-all system, where the person who wins an election becomes the lord of the manor. He takes charge of the trappings and the perquisite of office, and he now dishes it out to those he thinks he should dish it out to the detriment of the people. And that is a very bad situation. But again, just as I said earlier on, to me, 2027 is going to be a different ball game entirely. Because why? Because the level of awareness is rising. You can be sure that we in our group have agreed that indeed we are going to touch it up in collaboration with the media, in collaboration with international development partners, to ensuring that the level of awareness is top up. If it's top up now, people can just, somebody who belongs to the right cannot now jump into the left and say, I belong to the socialist, I belong to the welfareist, whereas you are a core capitalist. It can't work, because people cannot be led by the nose. We can see sentiment still playing around in this election, but there is about ideology. You can't just become a born again just like that. It's not that.
You talked about awareness. Let me still take you up on that.
Okay.
And I'll come to Dr. Shettiolu as well.
Okay.
The American founding fathers,
yes,
said, and I quote, "Governments are instituted among men,
yes,
deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed."
Good.
Right. Are we at that point, or we're getting to that point?
We are getting to that
where we're totally aware of the kind of power that the voter carries.
We are getting there now. You see now that the voters are getting involved, unlike before. You agree with me, and of course those who are watching will agree with me, that before, primary, what is primary? Primary issue of primary came up about for the last election, 2015. There is no primary election, that's inter-party election. There is nothing like that. It's just they look at your face. Oh, you'll be good as a senator, you'll be good as a member of House of Rep. Go. At worst, sometimes you don't see any poster. Nothing. Then you see people filling up offices, and since they are not responsible to the people, they will care less about the people. So they'll be doing the master's bidding. Because some people, of course, have the political structure. They are the one who now call people in. So because of that, the system breeds what it has. But now we are working on it, and I'm sure after this election now, people too will be aware that, okay, we've made a mistake. Okay, look at the primary election too. It was the delegate system that threw out the candidates on us. And obviously, that's another aberration that we have to look at. Can that be a good cleanup? Can we have of the best of the candidates that come up? Are we going to get the best of the best, or we just get whatever the delegates throw up at us? Because if the whatever the delegate chooses is what we, the general public, will now work on. So to me, it's still a work in progress. We are not yet there at all. In fact, we are still in the womb of political pregnancy. We are not yet born. Not to talk of start crawling.
At 63?
Yes, it doesn't matter. You see, my problem is that people should not egolize anything. It is better to agree that yes, I'm a failure and start all over again than pretending. I have a 63-year-old man now who just got informed he's going to the university. It's better. I mean, what gives him the idea that God will not elongate his life? And even if he dies in the process before graduating, at least he has taken a step. To me, it is a precedent to others that here is never too late. The principle here now is that it's never too late for us Nigerians to go back to the drawing board and ensuring that indeed we get it right. I say Ghana has gotten it right. I'm sure you know that about 30 years ago, yes, 30 years ago, Ghanaians were in Nigerians. They were drawers of water and hewers of wood for us. To the extent that, of course, that popular Ghana must go syndrome came in. Today, the reverse is the case. Nigerians now are in Ghana doing the opposite of what the Ghanaians are doing in Nigeria. How did they get there? They got it through political education, through taking their steps gradually, so and they have changed the narrative.
The direction of leaders.
Yes.
Through the direction of
yes, but again, the followers too have a must do. You must.
Let's look at the role of leaders in all of this, debate.
Yeah, it is the leader.
In terms of leadership,
yes,
where did we get it wrong, and what must we begin to also do?
We got it wrong voting sentimentally, not looking at people who are visionary. Sentiments have really beclouded our electoral process in this country. People vote based on sentiments, and of course, based on campaign and market package and so on. May God bless the soul of Yar'Adua. I like the man. But we know that it was sentiment because I've been in Kaduna State. So, if somebody who has no pedigree of performance now has a big and a huge office, obviously he won't perform. Nigeria is not a small joke. I have crisscrossed the 774 local government in this country. I know Nigeria like the back of my hand. So Nigeria is not a small place. I told you about my Adamawa experience. From Zong to Yola, 3 hours. The other day where the Riverine area, you go to somewhere like Delta, from Burutu to Bumadi and Patani on water, or even is it the rivers itself on water from Port Harcourt to Bonny. So Nigeria is a huge place. You need a visionary leader who can take us far, not sentimental people who are just there, okay, I'm there, and the president now begin to bring down ideas and policies that will not make things work, including that of the governor too, because those two set of people, those can make things work. If the governor, if you have a visionary governor, you see things happen in a state. If you have a visionary president, you see things happen in a country. And we have them all over the world. And I'll quickly go to Rwanda. We see the magic. After a terrible war, and you see that country bouncing back and becoming the light in Africa, and in fact the world. Right. I won't go to the to UAE, because that's another thing entirely. Right. Visionary leadership, we lack it, and I know we'll work towards it in the next election.
Right. Okay, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll take you to Kaduna State, where our correspondent Bosan Yakusak is standing by. Stay with us. Okay, we have Bosan Yakusak all the way from Kaduna State with an update for us. Good morning, Bosan.
Good morning, sir.
Right, very quickly, can we have your update from Kaduna?
Yes, sir. I am presently at Kaduna South, Kawu Ward to be precise, where the candidate of Progressive Congress APC and the presence of Victoria candidate APC is going to cast its vote. That's vote here. Voting already has commenced. Voting commenced at about 8:30. Accreditation and voting is ongoing simultaneously, and the atmosphere is calm. People are here. People are just ready to cast their votes. Nobody wants to hear anything, irrespective of political party. People are familiarizing. People are greeting each other. Usually, before now in Kaduna State, you see a bit of thuggery. You see of tension, but for the first time, I mean, we are seeing resident electorate, coming together, to show that irrespective of party, we're all one Nigeria, and we just want to vote and to see that our vote counts. So for now, I'm still at our watch. We're expecting the candidate of the All Progressive Congress, APC, to cast his vote here.
The general atmosphere in Kaduna State in terms of security, and then also you talked about accreditation starting at about 8:30. Were there any issues in terms of deployment of sensitive materials and ad hoc staff?
Yes, let me start with the deployment of sensitive materials. Yeah, we had issues. I visited the RAC Center in Naraiwa, that's in Chikolu government, one of the biggest government in Kaduna State. At the RAC Center, we experienced delay in the distribution of sensitive material. At about 8:20 when I left there, that was when they started distributing sensitive material. So you will expect that by the time the sensitive material will be reaching the polling, it would have been around 8:45, 9 a.m. and then maybe some polling units that are a bit far. It will be the sensitive material will arrive there at about maybe, let's say, even 10 or 10:30. I also visited another local government, that is Kaduna South, that's Kapuri Ward, Kapuri RAC Center, where we also experienced early distribution of sensitive material. So this is Kaduna North, this is a tall local government, and we experienced early distribution material also here. Let me go back to the issue of security. For the first time, bit of calmness. There's no much in this election. It's a bit calm and serene, and you can see that everybody just wants to pass his vote. We experienced was in Zaria, and it happened between the supporters of NNPP, that's the presidential candidate of Congress, who wanted to finish. Yes, sir. So that's the only issue of insecurity. But for now, the entire before now, you would have been experiencing tension, but people are moving freely. Government where is a bit calm and serene, and people are just queuing up to cast their vote, and we have not experienced any insecurity.
The flashpoints in Kaduna, especially areas that have experienced a lot of unrest in terms of the security situation in those areas.
Let's start with Birnin Gwari to be precise, because it's one of the major flashpoints that we have in Kaduna. For the first time in about 6-7 months, Birnin Gwari area is a bit accessible. Yesterday I did president visited Birnin Gwari, and even today we saw policemen who came back from Birnin Gwari. They said that the area is a bit serene and voting ongoing, even though there are some places in those polling units, the electorate, the residents are no longer residing there. So in those few polling units, election is not going to take place. But generally in Birnin Gwari, present election is going on in the present polling units that we have, that electorate were able to register, then residents still reside there. Then let me go back to Southern Kaduna also, where we also have a bit of flashpoint in those areas, like in Zambon at a local government, like Asha, in Jamal local government. Right now we're experiencing a bit of calmness, maybe because of the presence of security personnel, because heavy security personnel were deployed to those areas, and then the electorate also are educating themselves that they just want to cast their vote. So within themselves, they're educating themselves irrespective of party. They just want their votes to count. They don't want anything that will bring insecurity or crisis or conflict. No, they just want to cast their vote, and that's what's happening in all of those areas. For now, we have not had any report of any insecurity or any form of thuggery that we usually used to experience in most of these areas. So those flashpoints for now are a bit serene and safe, and the electorates are going about exercising their franchise without any form of fear or intimidation. Yes, sir.
We'll connect with you much later as the election progresses. Thank you. Right, that was our correspondent Bosen Yakusak giving us that update from Kaduna. Barrister Ogunade,
yes, sir.
We were talking about the issue of political parties. He also mentioned a very critical issue. Some polling units that were initially registered, but there won't be any election there. Of course, INEC before these elections mentioned that about 240 polling units will not have any activity there today. Yeah. How will this impact on this election?
Generally, this election, the major one, that's the presidential election, the votes, one vote even matters. But then, the impact it will have here now is that they will be doing a calculation of 12 to thoughts anyway. So to me, yes, it will have an impact, but I guess it's better to enforce the law rather than allow sentiments, as I was saying, to come up. Right. If, when the window was opened, people were told to do some things and they did not do it, obviously there's nothing one can do. I remember, particularly in the Kajuru local government area, Kaswa Magani local government area, those ones are in Kaduna State. I was there, and of course it was a whole lot of tension, insecurity, and all efforts to calm those people down that no, wait, you can't get this thing done through fighting and fisticuffs. It will be through your vote that you elect, because one of it is that they don't want government, they don't want the system on ground. We say, well, if that's how you feel, then it is an election that will determine that, because we run a democracy. And since it's a democracy, by virtue of Section 1, subsection 3, all persons and authority who occupies office must occupy office in Nigeria now under the 1999 Constitution through a democratic means. And that democratic means is through voting, not through the use of force. Nobody, the Constitution that we run now does not allow anybody to occupy office through the use of force or violence. So, election it is. Take part in it. So since they refuse to take part in it, and the effect will be that they will not be opportune to be part of those that will have a representative. And you can imagine, even let's remove that of the governor and the president. We were talking about a representative for your House of Assembly. We are talking of a representative for your House of Representative, and we are talking of a representative for the Senate. So if your community do not have such representatives, some people, or you don't have people representing you there, obviously it will be a little bit tough. People who even have those who represent them, it's tough for them, not to talk of few that do not have a representative at all. It now dovetails to the first question you asked about the responsibility of political office holder. Will they be responsible? Of course, issue of morality, issue of looking at it that I have that national interest in me, not the personal interest to serve myself. And when all those things are things that really will go in affecting those who do not partake in the process. So our advice that subsequently everyone should ensure that they partake in the process, the community leaders to talk to their people, and all. Because to me, it is those who participate in the process that will have the opportunity to now question the process when there is time. Like the Yoruba will say, that if you are to carry it and carry it and carry it, you do not help them to carry it. Obviously, it will be to your own detriment, because you will not be able to say anything when it comes to issues of talking.
Right. Okay, let's look at the electoral laws, as amended 2022.
Mm-hmm.
But Dr. Shetolu, I'll take you and then I'll go back to Vice Ogunde. It says that the electoral law 2022 has passed, gives a more robust framework for the conduct of elections in this country. What changes do you think this has made to our electoral processes?
Well, in the first instance, I should commend the President for signing to law the electoral law as amended. There are provisions of the Electoral Act that are commendable, and we should make elections far more credible, and it should make whoever emerges, earn legitimacy genuinely. But do you know what? I still have worries, because I'd like to react. So many issues have been raised, and I wish to react to some of these issues. There were abstinence in some local governments in a state. But I need to make this point, and it might be contentious. There's a right to vote. There's a right to abstain from voting. Voting is not compelling in Nigeria. Nigeria is not Russia, and it's not a communist state where a voter must vote. I suppose the attitude should be the Nigerian state should investigate why some elements, why some social forces within Nigeria detest the state, and there's a perception of alienation from the state. There's several dimensions to these issues, and a democracy, has been substituted somewhat with electoralism. And it does appear that when elections are conducted and elected and electors emerge, that will be democratic. It is not sufficient. It's not sufficient. Election, does not approximate democracy. The point I'm making is there are agitations within Nigeria. There are extremist tendencies. There are fundamentalists, and all kinds of divisive politics. What they do is also political, but it is divisive, and and they also play what are called fractured politics. Nigeria is not addressing those tendencies, and those tendencies will continue to undermine the stability of the polity. See, my attitude is there are problems, there are political and structural problems that are bigger than the Electoral Act, that Nigeria will require a new constitution to address those issues, so that Nigeria would have a sustained democracy in the long run. Sustained democracy in the long run. The Electoral Act is commendable, but the Electoral Act, like every other law, should be a shifting phenomenon, in the sense that there will be new challenges and there will be new realities that the state and the state actors will need to respond to. But I'm afraid that that the political class do appear to subvert aspects of the electoral law in many instances. Let me cite an instance. On political party financing. There are provisions of the Electoral Act in the previous act and in the act as amended, which specifies specific amounts, to contest for specific offices, from the State House of Assembly to presidential. How many of the political parties, conform to these financial regulations? And when they do not conform, what does INEC do to reprimand, dissonances? The other question is, does INEC have the capacity to, approbate and reprobate? The other aspect is about, vote buying, electoral malfeasance of all forms, etc., etc. You recall that there had been agitations for special calls to address electoral related offenses. That issue has not been handled, and it does appear to me it's a major gap, in the Electoral Act. INEC is overburdened, and I wouldn't expect INEC, to handle logistics, handle elections, and go to court, and then prosecute election-related offenders, and so on and so forth. You know what? The bottom line is, we cannot deviate the defects in our electoral system from the nature of democracy in Nigeria. Nigeria's democratic practice, it's important, and it's an imposition. We need a democracy that reflects Nigeria's historicities. The presidential democracy as constituted is a drain on Nigeria's lean political resources, and does not reflect, Nigeria's historical realities. I attended a workshop pre-election at Obafemi Awolowo University, and now I presented a paper on the role of civil society in election observation and monitoring. And my position is, it might appear controversial, election observation monitoring are mere symbolism. Yes, Nigeria is a sovereign state, and the law will depend on political actors and social forces within Nigeria to reconcile its interests, and make Nigeria work. We're not doing it, and we're not getting it right. International community, in whatever form, will not make it, will not institute democracy in Nigeria. We should make the point clear that, the international civil society organizations and some of the foreign monitors, also pursue, hidden, covert and overt agenda, and when Commonwealth, Union observers in European Union canvass, democracy, the type of democracy they canvass are Euro-American based democracy, which is not working for Nigeria. We're not addressing the structural distortions and the major political imbalances within Nigeria. Most of the issues we address are tokenism. Most of the issues we address are superstructural. You made the question, you raised the question earlier about leadership in Nigeria. If you ask me, the crisis of leadership, or the leadership deficit, or the leadership question, is symptomatic of a more fundamental crisis, which is the crisis of the Nigerian state and the economy. We should bear in mind that Nigeria is a neo-colonial and peripheral economy. Nigeria cannot, the type of leadership Nigeria will likely produce, would not likely be different from the dependent nature of the economy. And that explains why the governing class in Nigeria, relies on the West for donations, for handouts, for economic assistance, for economic developmental programs such as SAP and post-SAP and etc. If you ask me, Nigeria needs, the Nigerian state and economy as constituted needs fundamental adjustments. Right. We're still far from it.
Okay, Barrister Ogunade.
Yes.
Let me come to you. Dr. Shetolu has raised some very critical issues. I'd like you to respond to that.
Yes.
As a constitutional lawyer as well.
Yes.
Let's look at these issues and dissect them for us.
Yes. The Electoral Act 2022 has brought in a lot of changes into the election and electoral activities in this country. The first thing is that it has now empowered INEC the more, both in terms of financial independence. It now gets its money direct from the first charge, unlike before that the executive will be disturbing it, will not release money to it. I'm sure after the signing of the act, you did not see or hear that INEC has been calling and crying that they don't have money to conduct or to move to do their election. The little hiccup that you have seen now are just a minor issues, and of course reports from my people all over the country now indicates that indeed things are working.
We have the visuals from Ondo right now.
Equally, I have something too from my people in Ondo, particularly in Akure and Okitipupa, who says that of course the voting have started, and the less demand from Who was the last correspondent now? Not
That's from
Kaduna.
Oyo.
Oyo?
Kaduna.
No, is it? Kaduna. The man that was talking from Kaduna, because I know
We
that
also have
is
visuals from Anambra.
So things will start. I guess that's one of the candidates now. So things will start, and of course it will move on. So one of the things that INEC has, the Electoral Act has given INEC, is financial independence. So INEC now has the opportunity to get money and of course all the logistics it needs. Another issue that INEC has been given the opportunity is that it has been empowered the more to work on issues of time frame. Now they give notices, and that time frame has to be adhered to. And you saw that's why some candidates were lost out. Some big time players in the political system lost out because they did not have the opportunity of playing with time. And of course, section 3 of the new Electoral Act provides for that area. Then again, we look at it in terms of section of encouraging political parties to have their primaries. Before, political parties have primaries anywhere, anyhow. But now, you must have your primary in a designated place within the jurisdiction of that party, of that state. That is one, or even of that office. If it is the House of Representatives, it must be within that federal constituency. If it is in the Senate, it must be within the senatorial area. If it's the governorship, it must be within that state. So unlike before, that you see some parties from Delta State crossing to Anambra in Onitsha to having their primary. Right. That one is no more there. Then another one is they must notify INEC before they have any of their election, their congress or their convention. INEC must be notified. And once INEC is notified and represented, God bless you, sir, and represented, that again is another major improvement in the electoral process. Then the hallmark of it is section 84 of the electoral process. If you are a government officer, you must resign your office before you seek a political office holder. You must resign your office before you seek another political office. And of course, the only people who are exempted are those of the office of the governor and members of the National Assembly, and of course that's the president and the vice president. All other political office holders, be they commissioners, board members, ministers and co, all of them must resign. And you saw the brouhaha that caused when that issue came up. Some people wanted to truncate it, but we moved against it, and of course it works. Then of course there is timeline now for campaign. That's just 150 days, unlike before that anybody can do anything anyhow. So all these little provisions and improvement have now encouraged the 2020 Electoral Act to be strong. Another issue 2022. Then another one is the provision for electronic voter database. That's the BVAS, that's the central server and all. Of course, I'm sure we'll take it further in the use of technology to making the Nigerian election to work very well. Then of course the power of INEC to review its conduct. You know, during the last election, one of the candidates was talking in Anambra that the gun was put on his head, and that's why he announced the election result under duress. Like the referee, you know, in a football match, the referee has the power, VAR, I guess they call it, that once you can go and check, they will go and check the VAR to review the situation. The same thing, INEC has that power now to review the situation of events when it comes to issues of election, then exclusion of political party appointees from acting as voters or as delegates that I've discussed again. Then if the death of a candidate, learning from what happened during that's in Kogi State. That's in Kogi State, right? So now if somebody dies, definitely it's a new process again. Not that they will say, yeah, I step into his shoe or don't step in his shoe, because that person has not been elected. It is if he has been elected and of course he has been announced as being elected, then that of the narrative will change. And like in Audo's case, when the thing was just coasting home, and of course there was not an announcement, obviously that cannot avail anybody. So those major improvement in the Electoral Act for 2022 will put more energy into the system, and of course it will give INEC another strong opportunity to conduct the election better than we have previously. So from what is happening now, we see that no doubt the starting is a bit shaky, but it seems they are getting themselves. Report now is that everywhere my people too have been sending reports that the election is taking off. The sensitive materials are getting to the point, and of course the voters, because when I went out I was asking the voters, are you tired, are you going home? They said no, they are on ground gidigba. They want to vote, and that today is the D-Day. They've been looking to us this day, and we thank God that God has preserved our life to see today, and God that has preserved our life to see today will help us to see a better future.
We'll take a break. We'll bring you some visuals from across the country as sent in by correspondents. Stay with us. Of the presidential and national assembly elections holding today. Vice President, just as we round up this session, let me ask you to give us an update from across Nigeria, from your observers.
Yes.
What's happening?
Yes. It's a very interesting and encouraging thing now. Reports from all over now indicates that elections have started fully in most of the places that our people are, and it is encouraging because they are sending their reports from New Okwoba, from Abule Egba, from Ikotekpene. You had me talk with somebody now from Ikotekpene. He was even eager. He wants to join us on air. From Agoiwe, from, where is this one again? From Ekpe, from Ilorin. Let me begin even to be more specific now. INEC officials arrived 10:10. Let's see somewhere again. I'm just sending pictures. Accreditation and voter commenced at this polling unit station 009, 1 Omotoye Estate, Ward 11 Isale Odo Agege, right? Another one in Abule Egba, Buru, Alimosho local government, Unit 147, Oladimeji Junction, Meron. They started accreditation by 9:45. Somewhere in Alimosho equally. Let me see. There are some far-flung places in Ikeja here, the barracks, the police barracks there. Then of course Alimosho 031101190 Alimosho. They have started to. So all over, I'm going to look for some people outside in Ondo State, in Okitipupa. You know, all of them. Everyone is just sending their report. So the result, the report is that voting now, let's say 10:30.
In spite of the
hiccup, the initial hiccup, they've started, and of course it's taking on very well. My joy is that at least the voters are patient, because before 1 hour delay, they will start all their wahala again. And when I went out before coming back 9 o'clock, I asked some of the voters that I saw, will you go home in anger? They said, no, we are going to wait and vote. I said, will you be patient for them to set up and for the procedure to start? They said, we'll be patient, even if it's midnight, they are ready. And of course, I know that definitely they are coming, maybe in some cases 2 hours, 3 hours late. It will be removed from the time they are going to close, so that they will not just shortchange the people. I guess that's where the problem will start, and I don't think they should allow it. The leadership of INEC now should quickly give instruction to their people at the grassroots that they should extend the time they will close ballot.
Everyone should be allowed to vote. Right. Dr. Shejo, let me ask you for your parting shot on this segment. We'll be back very soon,
okay,
to look at some of the critical issues.
Well, it's rather early to make conjectures about the elections. We do not have reports from the Northwest. we still do not have reports from the northeast. We have a report from the non-central, which is Benue, excluding Nasarawa, excluding Kogi, you know, and other north central states. We do not have reports from the south and southeast. So we're still early in the day to make concrete conjectures about the elections. You know. Yes, I hope we'll get more concrete feedbacks.
We'll definitely.
You know, later in the day.
All right. We'll take a break now. We'll be back at 12 noon as we continue our discussion on election watch, and as we continue to bring you live updates, reports, and breaking news on the election watch. Stay with us.